that were caught and released into the country and the millions more that were allowed to either fly into the country or overstay their visas. It is a clear and present danger to the national security of this country. And we have federal judges telling President Trump that he can't deport these threats from our communities. This is the choice facing every American. Either we all side and get behind President Trump to remove these terrorists from our communities, or we let a rogue, radical left judiciary shut down the machinery of our national security apparatus. President Trump is going to see this through to his conclusion, and we will find and remove every terrorist from this country, and President Trump will make this nation safer than ever before, and he'll do it over the fighting and opposition of the Democrat Party, over the fighting and opposition of the communist left-wing judges, over the fighting and opposition of the far-left federal bureaucracy. He will not be deterred, Sean. He will see this through, I promise you.
Happy Memorial Day to all of you, except to convicted felon Donald Trump. Donald Trump also doesn't want you to have a happy Memorial Day, as he launched an all-caps insane screed on Truth Social, wherein he is attacking not only our former president, Joseph Biden, but then more explicitly attacking the, quote, judges who are on a mission to keep murderers, drug dealers, rapists, gang members, and release prisoners from all over the world in our country so they can rob, murder, and rape again. Donald Trump goes on to attack these judges, all protected by these USA-hating judges who suffer from an ideology that is sick and very dangerous for our country. And then he, of course, tries to kiss the ass of the United States Supreme Court. He says, hopefully the United States Supreme Court and other good and compassionate judges throughout the land will save us from the decisions of the monsters who want our country to go to hell. I hate to read anything from this insane SOB, but I wanted to read that because I wanted you to see how absolutely unhinged, unstable, mentally compromised, faculties compromised, that Donald Trump currently is. I wanted to share with you that that is a sentiment on Memorial Day, which in another video that's being posted, I talk about how important this day is because it's a hallowed day. But I also wanted to talk about it because this is the sentiment. This is the sentiment that is being fomented and encouraged. This violent rhetoric, which has now exceeded just rhetoric and has now actually graduated to actions, or escalated to actual conduct. This is what Donald Trump wants Americans to think about our judges. Our judges, our co-equal branch of government, the judiciary. He wants people to think that that's what our judges are doing just because they are ruling against him, as they follow the rule of law, as they adhere to norms and institutions, and they follow the procedures, they do the right thing. He wants to attack the judges. That is the act of a dictator, an autocrat, a fascist, and that is unacceptable. And we're going to talk about what Congress is doing to make it better. So, just a few days ago in Congress, the following bill was introduced by the Senate and the House. It's a bicameral bill, bicameral, two houses bill, or two chambers, excuse me, bill. So Senators Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer, Alex Padilla, and Adam Schiff introduced legislation regarding the weaponization of the U.S. Marshals Service, and we'll get into an explanation of that in a second. The weaponization of the U.S. Marshal Service by Trump and the executive branch. And it was co-introduced by the following House representatives: Eric Swalwell, Jamie Raskin, and Hank Johnson. So there was some companion legislation that was introduced in the House. The name of this is called the MARSHALS Act, MARSHALS Act. It would do the following. I'm going to read this to you. Create a U.S. Marshals Board modeled on the Board of U.S. Capitol Police, the federal law enforcement agency that protects Congress. The board would consist of the Chief Justice of the United States and the Judicial Conference of the United States. Number 2, it would authorize the Chief Justice in consultation with the board to select a director of the U.S. Marshals Service and U.S. Marshals in each judicial district of the United States and its territories. Number 3, allow the marshals to continue their existing work of protecting judges and enforcing judicial subpoenas and court orders without political interference, and to preserve their other law enforcement functions, parentheses, pursuing fugitives, seeking missing children, etc., end parentheses, at the request of the Attorney General and with the consent of the Director of the Marshals. This is really important. This Marshals Act is important. Why? Because the U.S. Marshals are currently under the direction of the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi. And we know what Pam Bondi thinks about the judiciary. Don't take it from me. Listen to her. Just take a listen.
I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
So when you see these judges trying to obstruct your efforts to make this country safer, what is your message to them?
We are going to prosecute you, and we are prosecuting you.
Pam Bondi also saying that judges that are ruling against Donald Trump and the executive branch, that they are, quote, deranged. That's the Attorney General of the United States. She is not only a lawyer who took an oath of professional ethics and responsibility, she's a member of a bar, and she has licensing, but she's also the Attorney General of the United States. She is not the personal attorney for convicted felon Donald Trump. She's supposed to be the Attorney General of the United States. And so when she is attacking the members of the judiciary, it is natural and healthy to have the skepticism and the belief that the U.S. Marshals at her direction would stand down if there's a federal order that has to be enforced. In what context? I don't know. Maybe when you have to go and you have to hold somebody in contempt of court, like Kristi Noem, for example. What's going to happen when the U.S. Marshals try to go and enforce a court order and Pam Bondi tells the U.S. Marshal Service to stand down? If you're the U.S. Marshal Service, you're in some serious purgatory. You're in limbo. And so this Marshals Act would pretty much remove the Marshals Service from the executive branch, and it would actually be placed in to the control of the court system itself. So why is this important? Well, there's also the practical implication of the following. Even the judges themselves are considering taking security into their own hands because they do not trust the President of the United States and the Attorney General and the executive branch to take care of them. How wild is that? Consider that for a second. How crazy is that judges, federal judges specifically, are worried that they cannot trust the executive branch to keep them safe. Let's talk about what's been happening lately because this is important for context. So not only have you had Elon Musk calling for a, quote, immediate wave of judicial impeachments after a series of rulings against him came out concerning Doge, but you also have the Vice President of the United States, footnote, who's a lawyer, like Pam Bondi. So the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, is saying that the rulings that are coming against the executive branch for Donald Trump and his crappy executive orders and the other policy moves that he's making, that those rulings are, quote, illegal, according to J.D. Vance. And then you have people like Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is just flat out calling them lunatic leftist judges. And he flat out just says that you don't even have to listen to what the judges order to have happen, which is not true. That's a total and complete lie. And then Donald Trump, not only did I read you the insanity from this morning on Memorial Day, but he also posted on Truth Social on March 18th about Judge James Boasberg. Remember, he's the federal judge, the chief judge in the DC courts, who said that there was a lot of bad that was being committed by the Trump administration when it took those flights, and the Trump administration disobeyed his order to have the flights turn around and bring back the people before they went to El Salvador to CCOT. So Trump called Judge Boasberg. He said, quote, "This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached," and impeach was in all caps. And we know Chief Justice John Roberts responded and said, hey, Donald Trump, impeachment, that's not the way that things work when you disagree with a ruling. But I wanted you guys to know that the amount of attacks that are happening on the federal judges is very, very serious. And it's because of Donald Trump. That's where the fault lies. Starting in April of this year, so just a month and some change ago, some federal judges and their relatives have been receiving unsolicited pizza deliveries. Sounds harmless. I mean, maybe that's just a prank that you're familiar with when you were growing up, but listen to how these pizza deliveries are being done. The pizza deliveries are unsolicited, and they are in the name of Daniel and Daryl. Daniel and Daryl is the deceased, murdered son of federal judge Esther Salas. It is disgusting to be sending these pizza deliveries in the name of Judge Salas's dead son, but it's sending a message. The message, according to a judge, is this, quote, "They want to let you know that they know where you live, and they want to let you know that they're capable of violence and harm." This is not being done by the Democrats, people. This is being done because of Donald Trump and MAGA and the Republicans, the lack of respect and the calls for violence and the calls to disregard these legitimate and legal judicial orders that are being issued. So there's understaffing in the U.S. Marshals Service. There's lack of funding for judicial security, courthouse security. I mean, it is just, unfortunately, a perfect storm of terrible conditions, ripe for disaster. And that's the reason why even the federal judges at their recent judicial conference said, maybe we need to take security into our own hands because we cannot trust Donald Trump to do it. Members of a security committee who met recently for the judicial conference in Washington said that they were concerned about threats emerging because of Donald Trump stepping up criticism of those who rule against his policies. Did you know that the sister of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, that she was targeted with a bomb threat? Did you know that? And did you know that a federal judge had a SWAT team called on him after he overturned an executive order restricting birthright citizenship? That judge, Judge John Coffner of the Western District of Washington, said the idea of moving the Marshal Service out of the control of Pam Bondi and the executive branch, that it was a, quote, wonderful idea. Judge Coffner said, quote, "There's never been any reason in the 43 years that I've been on the bench to worry that the Marshal Service would do whatever was appropriate until recent years." Recent years? Yeah, I guess since Donald Trump took the bench. Excuse me, boy, that was a slip. Donald Trump ascended to the king throne that the Supreme Court justices gave him. So it's interesting. Talk about buyer's remorse. We've talked about this before. The Supreme Court having some buyer's remorse for letting Trump think that he's a king. Well, there's consequences for it, right? And so I wanted to also say this to you as well. I want to read this to you because this is important for you guys to hear. So the judges are being forced to have to decide about their personal safety and the safety of their families versus following the law. It is a profound moment in time and in history when judges are feeling the pressure to cow to political pressure because they fear for their physical safety. And when the president of the United States is allowed to post these attacks on the judges, when he actually posts these attacks, he says these attacks, and you allow the vice president and the attorney general and Stephen Miller and others that are part of this administration to attack judges, what do you expect to have happen? You can't expect anything less than violence to occur because you're allowing it. You are creating a permission structure for people to think that violence is the solution when you disagree with a judicial ruling. Folks, that is not the case. It is called take a damn appeal if you don't agree and follow it to its natural course. You don't see this happening. You didn't see this happening during Biden. You didn't see this happening with the Democrats. It's not happening, folks. This is a distinctly Trump and Republican moment in time. I'll leave you with the following. The number of threats and potential threats to protected persons investigated in fiscal year 2024, according to the U.S. Marshals Service, 822. But this is the number of judges that are currently protected by U.S. Marshals, 2,700. Folks, 2,700 federal judges are there that can rule against Donald Trump. That is 2,700 federal judges that run the risk of physical harm if they disagree with Donald Trump. And so, yes, let us support publicly this idea that the MARSHALS Act allows for the U.S. Marshals Service to not be controlled by the executive branch. People like Attorney General Pam Bondi, get it the hell out of her control because she is a recipe for disaster along with the other terrible ingredients of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, and other crazies and loonies at Fox News. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I'll see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.